Carl Gustav Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who founded the field of analytical psychology. He was very interested in the inner workings of a person, their personality, desires, what's conscious to them and what isn't. He called the center of our consciousness the ego. It regulates everything that we're conscious of and decides how to and on what to act. However, everybody also has a great many traits and part of their personality that they're unconscious of. This includes what Jung called the shadow. Jung divided the unconscious into two layers: personal unconsciousness and collective unconsciousness. The former is all that is part of you as an individual, but that you're not aware of or even in denial about. This will include hidden or unknown emotions, desires, memories, feelings, and more. The collective unconscious encompasses those unconscious feelings, thoughts, and instincts that all people as a group have or have had in the past. They are the things universally inherited by humans. Jung believed all human beings share certain traits or affinities, and they can be described as archetypes. Archetypes have been a part of our collective history since long before Jung, and commonly found in mythology, fairy tales, or religious stories. Jung believed that bringing your unconsciousness into your unconscious mind is a foolproof recipe for becoming the best human being you can be, or, as Dr. Jung would put it, a superior person. And in today's video, we're going to show you 7 ways to become a superior person according to the philosophy of Carl Jung. Number 1. Express yourself creatively. Jung says, "Without this playing with fantasy, no creative work has ever yet come to birth. The debt we owe to the play of the imagination is incalculable." Jung believed that the art an individual makes houses parts of their unconsciousness within every piece. When making art, our inner states and situations unknowingly influence what we make and the way we make it. Jung incorporated the drawing of mandalas into his philosophy. Mandalas specifically have been used for decades by different ancient cultures as a symbol of the universe and wholeness. And Jung decided that the best kind of circle motif to represent its artist is the mandala. For a long while, Jung sketched a mandala in his notebook every morning and found that it did indeed correspond with his feelings, emotions, and thoughts at the time. The more harmonious the mandala, the better you're probably doing. Jung hypothesized that people have an especially strong urge to make art such as mandalas when they're in phases of personal growth. When you or your life is changing, you feel less in control and need some sort of way to regain it. If you draw mandalas at regular intervals and learn how to interpret them, you have an incredible tool for self-improvement. Drawing a mandala relaxes your brain and will help your thoughts focus on all the things that you normally suppress. Moreover, the kinds of lines you draw and colors you choose can tell you things about yourself. Do you use round, soft shapes, or harsh lines, cold or warm colors? And what do you think this reflects? If you analyze yourself through mandalas every day, week, or month, you can track your growth and changes in a way you never have before. But it's not just limited to mandalas. All creative works you produce can help you analyze your way of thinking, priorities, and unconscious concerns. All these insights can then help you get to know and improve yourself, and, therefore, become a superior person. Number 2. Be conscious of your performances. According to Jung, the persona is a complicated system of relations between individual consciousness and society. Fittingly enough, a kind of mask designed on the one hand to make a definite impression upon others, and on the other, to conceal the true nature of the individual. One of the biggest things that holds you back from being the superior person in a room is the fact that you probably overly adjust to the other people in it. Knowingly or not, most people present a fake version of themselves in some way or another whenever they're in social situations. For example, they laugh at unfunny jokes, agree with statements they don't actually support, or lie about their own well-being for the comfort of others. It's almost a performance, like you're wearing a mask over your actual self, and Carl Jung called this mask the persona. Your persona is how you present yourself in order for people to perceive you in the way you want them to. You might want to seem kind and easygoing, and thus you agree with everything and give compliments that you don't mean. Our persona develops when we learn about social rules and the expectations of those around us during childhood. Someone who grew up in a household where sharing your opinion was seen as arguing and would be punished has probably developed a persona that tends to avoid conflict and goes along with the most popular opinion. In contrast, someone who grew up in a household that saw emotions as weakness has probably developed a persona that is tough and unfeeling. But our persona isn't just one thing. According to Jung, everybody has multiple masks. The two examples we just looked at could have been the same person. You actually wear multiple masks at a time. For example, you want to appear agreeable and tough, and sometimes what masks you wear depends on the circumstances. You act differently among family members than with friends, and you certainly act differently among friends than you do with authority figures. For all of these situations, you have separate masks. The persona causes problems when the mask you're wearing is unnecessary, unhelpful, or detrimental to your well-being. Imagine the person who always acts tough among friends, even though they're going through something difficult. This mask prevents them from getting any help or relief. This clashing with one's actual needs is very frustrating and bad for your self-image. You might start to blame yourself for wanting to open up and show emotion, even if it is totally natural, because it would destroy your persona. When you think of your persona as the way you should truly be, you're aiming for something impossible, and as a result, you constantly disappoint yourself. Jung called this over-identification with the persona. You believe that you are your persona, and get angry at yourself whenever you fail to live up to the expectations of that persona. Not only is this a miserable, harmful, and inauthentic way to live, but someone who's been over-identifying with their persona for too long could accidentally destroy it. This might happen in the way of burnouts that cause you to be unable to act any longer and might cause you to isolate yourself. You could also lose your mask right in the middle of a performance. The tough person suddenly bursts out crying in front of their friends, or the agreeable person snaps at someone sharing an opposing opinion. That said, Jung also didn't believe that we should just get rid of our masks entirely. In fact, he felt that they were absolutely necessary for our social existence. For example, not showing emotions in front of your boss is probably for the best. Crying in his office will definitely be seen as unprofessional, especially if it happens often. And it probably isn't best to share very personal and intimate or traumatic details about your life on the work floor. Moreover, being agreeable can help you out if you try to make a good impression on someone. So how do we keep our masks on without over-identifying with them or using them too much? Put simply, instead of letting the mask rule you, you should learn how to rule the mask. This process is known as restoration. By restoring, Jung means developing a flexible persona that doesn't collide with one's true self, but rather helps one's true self navigate society. The restored persona should be a persona one is aware of, not one that manifests unconsciously or is seen as your true self. In other words, you should know when you're putting on the mask and why. Instead of automatically concealing your emotions, you should ask yourself, case by case, what would be most beneficial to me right now? Sharing your emotions with close friends could relieve you, while doing so with your boss might just be a bad move. By being conscious of your performance, you can choose to integrate your true self into it. If your true self is someone who's sometimes emotional and sometimes disagreeable, you can choose when to let it out instead of concealing it entirely. Superior people know exactly when to act a certain way, and you could too. In order to integrate your authentic self into your persona, though, you should get to know your authentic self. Number 3. Identify your dark side. In the words of Jung, everyone carries a shadow, and the less it's embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. One of the most important parts of Jung's philosophy is getting to know your shadow self. Your shadow self consists of all the parts of yourself that you consider bad, reject, and repress. This might include anger issues, dark thoughts, shameful tendencies, or even sexual desires. In many cases, the shadow contains traits or desires that are rejected by society as a whole, and we may have been taught from very early on to hide those parts of ourselves. You deny their existence and hope that by doing that, you make them go away. However, it doesn't work. Instead, these traits are there, will always be there, and sometimes they'll show their ugly head when you least expect it. For example, someone who's convinced that they're never angry and that anger is a negative emotion might one day just feel a strong sensation of anger and have absolutely no way to prevent a massive outburst. To truly learn who you are, you have to get to know your shadow. You have to become conscious of the unconscious. And in order to do so, you should regularly take a step back and analyze your own behavior, thoughts, and feelings during daily life. This could be done through journaling or meditation. Why did you behave the way you did? Did it feel authentic to you? Why or why not? What was your first urge or instinct in a certain situation? You have to interrogate yourself like you're interrogating someone else. By getting to know your shadow self, Jung means that it's important to become aware of the shadow self without identifying with it. You don't have to see yourself as all those traits you try not to show. If your shadow houses anger, you don't have to see yourself as an angry person. Instead, just acknowledge the existence of these things. Realize and accept that they are inside of you. And if, like in this example, you find that you're an angry person deep down, you should think of when it might actually be helpful to show that anger instead of always trying to push it down. When's the right time to wear the mask? And when is it right to put it down? For example, getting angry at a passerby for bumping into you seems unhelpful and unhealthy. However, getting angry at a friend who cancelled their plans with you for the 5th time in a row might need some anger from your side for them to truly realize that they're hurting you. In other words, you have to find ways to integrate everything you find in your shadow into your personality instead of ignoring it. Your shadow isn't here to punish you, but rather to teach you, and your repressed traits are here to stay. So only if you accept and embrace your shadow qualities can you truly improve yourself. The self-knowledge and ability to use all sides of yourself is what you need to do to become a superior person. Number 4. Get to know your two selves. To quote Jung, "What can a man say about woman, his own opposite?" In Jungian philosophy, if you dive deeper into the shadow, you'll find that you house two kinds of traits, masculine and feminine. Jung called this unconscious part of yourself the animus, which is masculine, and anima, which is feminine. These apparently opposite, genderized traits that you possess are called your contrasexual aspects. Jung believed that if you're a woman, you most likely have a personal masculine psyche or animus within you, and if you're a man, you most likely have an inner personal feminine psyche or anima. The anima and animus are based on the Greek terms of eros and logos. Eros is associated with creativity, passion, connection, and wholeness. Logos is associated with rationality, objectivity, power, and action. However, due to the standard expectations of 20th century society, men are encouraged to suppress their feminine traits and vice versa. We hide them away in our subconscious and behave the way we think we're supposed to. Of course, it's obvious nonsense that literally half of the global population all think in precisely one way with one set of values, and the other half think entirely the opposite. And this should clue you into the fact that, in reality, personality traits are almost entirely unrelated to sex or gender. Sometimes women suppress their anima, sometimes men repress their animus, but we all have a wonderful, messy, ever-changing mix of both. The point here is not to convince you that you're suppressing certain gendered traits or that this is in any way a negative thing, but to look inward and ask yourself how that mix resides in you right now and how it affects how you're feeling and how you engage with the world and people around you. In reality, everyone is contradictory in some way. A person can both value truth and be a liar, or seem an extrovert but feel like an introvert. But since this is not commonly acknowledged, we're often encouraged to only embrace the traits expected of our gender identity and ignore, or worse, actively admonish those that might contradict them. We repress. Think of a man who loves to knit. It's considered a creative, feminine hobby and thus not expected of a man. He might want to try and hide his hobby for fear of insults and ridicule, while this could be a wonderful skill to have and a way to relax. Another example is the belief that women are generally better with emotions than men. Because of that idea, a woman might feel like she has to talk about her emotions all of the time even if she doesn't want to, while a man might be discouraged to do so even if he wants to. The denial of your anima or animus is not only unnecessary, but will actively twist your traits into something ugly. Men who repress their emotions to be more manly might become cold and cruel, while women who force themselves into certain roles because society says they should could become bitter and distant. Thus, it's important to learn how to recognize and accept your anima and animus. Everybody has contradictory traits, and they can live in balance, just like your negative shadow traits can. To analyze your masculine and feminine tendencies, you can observe people around you and see which of them you admire or think positively about, and which you find yourself being judgmental about. Then question yourself. Why do you feel a certain way about one person and differently about another? Would your opinion of those people be any different if you perceived them as a different gender? What feelings do you usually have when an individual's behavior doesn't align with societal gender norms? Does this affect you? And if so, how? And why? All these questions and practices will help you gain more insight into yourself and can help you become more open, balanced, and successful. In other words, superior. Number 5. Look into your archetypes. Jung tells us, archetypes are like riverbeds which dry up when the water deserts them, but which it can find again at any time. The very last part of your subconscious comes from something that Jung called the collective unconscious. This collective unconscious is a certain unconsciousness shared by all human beings through their shared history and experiences. Through our ancestors, we inherit certain traits from birth, and that is the reason for all similarities between people across time, cultures, and space. They are the natural tendencies of the human mind to see the world around you in a certain way and behave in a certain way. This doesn't mean that every single person shares the exact same traits, but rather there's a finite collection of traits, and everyone has some of them. Some examples of archetypes that Jung describes are the hero. The hero is a brave fighter who thinks that if they work hard enough, they can achieve anything. They're pretty stubborn and believe in themselves a lot, maybe even too much sometimes. The caregiver. This archetype prioritizes others over themselves, often putting the needs of others before their own. they tend to say yes instinctively, guided by their caring nature. The trickster. The trickster is a playful character who seeks enjoyment and fun above all else. Even when facing challenges, they're inclined to use humour, negotiation, and mischief to navigate their way through the situation. Doing research on the Jungian archetypes and trying to determine which ones you see in yourself the most can tell you a lot about your subconscious. When you start to think about what archetypes you identify with, you'll get to know yourself in an entirely new way. It can also help with shadow work, determining the anima and animus, and your persona, because every archetype carries positive and negative traits. For example, imagine someone who's part of the caregiver archetype. Their positive traits consist of their kindness and helpful nature, which results in lots of loyal friends and a good reputation. However, they might take care of others to the point of neglecting themselves, or even grow bitter thanks to their own insatiable urge to ignore their own needs. When you get to know what archetypes you identify with, you'll get to know some of your strong and weak points, and will know better how to balance them out. Number 6. Explore yourself. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Another part of our inner workings is what Jung called the self. If you imagine yourself as a circle or mandala, as Jung loved to use, the middle of the mandala is the ego, which is the conscious part of you, and around it is the self. The self can be represented by a whole mandala. It contains every single nook and cranny of your mind, the conscious, unconscious, and everything in between. As the center, the ego is only a small part of the self. There is also the shadow, anima, animus, persona, and so much more in you. The self generally contains lots of opposites. You're both an angry and calm person, part introvert and part extrovert, sometimes stressed and other times relaxed. When the self is in balance, all the parts of you get their chance to shine when it's most helpful. It contains everything we are, everything we once were, and everything we can be. The self is something so vast that it can be explored throughout your whole life, and you will always find something new. Your search for yourself is never over. Continuously exploring the self is the key to individuality, as well as confidence in yourself and your own decisions. This is because your goal should be to make the ego, your consciousness, as big as possible, to know as much about yourself as you can. The self is a sign that we should always continue to challenge ourselves and ask ourselves questions, and the actions we take should be part of that too. When you have an important decision to make, it's the self, the entirety of you, that you should explore. You have to look inwards, not outwards. As Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." You can only live the very best life and become superior as a person if you always try to keep exploring yourself. By doing so, we can truly get to know and improve ourselves throughout our entire lives. This ends with us being finally free to explore who we truly are as individuals, to find balance, and to become anything we want to be. When you freely explore the self, only then can you become who you truly are. Number 7. Find your meaning. In our final quote from Carl Jung for this video, he says, "The sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being." According to Jung, one of the biggest reasons for unhappiness and the inability to feel better as a person is when you don't have anything to believe in. Without religion, spirituality, science, or philosophy, our lives don't only seem boring, but also very arbitrarily unfair. Or in other words, hopeless. We need to have certain beliefs to find meaning in our lives. According to Jung, meaning will grant you purpose. If your life has meaning, you know what you're living for. So there must be some form of religion, spirituality, a philosophical maxim, scientific principle, or something else that you truly believe in. So, look inwards and think to yourself, what do I believe in? What spiritual or religious beliefs? What moral principles? What values? How do I act on a daily basis? What do I expect from others? You could journal about these questions or meditate on them. Finding what you believe in gives you the power to use it even more and consciously transform it into the most effective version it can be. It helps you to both motivate yourself and see more in life. But don't worry, none of this means that you have to become religious or a philosopher. It just means that you shouldn't view life as meaningless. Find a goal to work towards or ideals to adhere to. All superior people in the world consciously know what they live by and why. It's their way of taking control. And it's what makes them so superior. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to check out our full Philosophies for Life playlist, and for more videos to help you find success and happiness using beautiful philosophical wisdom, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching.